Now we have Ed Davis. He's the former Boston Police Commissioner and WBZ security analyst, joining us now on Zoom. And Ed, what do you think about this situation? Broad daylight, Memorial Drive, a man walking with a long gun shooting indiscriminately at cars.
Well, this is terribly frightening. It's an outrageous incident in that neighborhood. I was on the phone with the Harvard professor who came right up on it just as they were shutting the roads down. And I have a friend that lives on River Street, so I'm very familiar with that area. It's a heavily populated and a lot of stores in that area. So a lot of apartments, a lot of stores. And the particularly troubling thing about this is there was a rifle involved, and apparently numerous rounds fired from that rifle. So you know, that is as dangerous as it gets. Those rounds can go for a long distance. They can cut through cover and hurt people. And it's just amazing that we're not hearing any reports of anyone else being hurt. And one other thing, it appears as though an officer engaged the suspect. If that officer only had a sidearm, that is an extremely one-sided fight. The person with the rifle has an incredible advantage of power and distance and accuracy that a sidearm does not have. So I'm waiting to see exactly how this thing played out, but thank God nobody else is injured.
Yeah, Ed, it's Cheryl Fiandaca, and thank you for joining us. We are getting a report just a few minutes ago from the state police saying that they do have a report of one person injured. And we did speak to a couple of folks who said that they were driving by and their cars were shot at. You know, they had no idea what was going on, so it had to be terrifying for them. You know, how quickly was and how important was it that the trooper was able to engage the suspect so quickly when this was all unfolding? And they said there were, you know, potentially dozens of shots fired.
Well, it took extreme courage to do that, and it quite possibly saved people. This kind of a situation in a heavily populated urban area like that that has the potential for many casualties. So it was great to see that an officer was able to intervene. The fact that it was a trooper is probably accurate because that road is state police jurisdiction. And I'm not certain if he just came across it or there was a call there, but I guess we'll have to see how that plays out, Cheryl.
Yeah, we were hearing that the call came in, the 911 call came in at around 1:30 for an active shooter, shots fired. And, you know, at the time of that call came in, they were already in a number of shots that were fired at the cars, at people. We're hearing reports from witnesses saying that the suspect was walking on the sidewalk, just shooting at cars as they were driving by, not knowing, you know, what was going on, of course. And that's when the trooper came up and apparently engaged him at that time. But as you said, it had to be a very dangerous situation for everyone there, particularly for the trooper who ended up getting out of his car and trying to stop the gunfire.
Right. As I said, there's a real serious tactical disadvantage to taking on somebody who has a rifle if you only have a sidearm. So it takes incredible courage to do that. But I think the other thing we should think about right now is the way these incidents have played out in other states and cities. I'm constantly called to discuss a death toll in situations like this in many places where these things have happened. Thank God that doesn't seem to be the case here. And I guess we'll have to see. Hopefully no innocent people were injured in this. But this could have had a very different ending if not for the intervention of the trooper.
And I mean, I think that has to be the scariest part of the whole situation. As you said, this is a congested area. I think Memorial Drive in Cambridge, particularly in this neighborhood, is normally quite safe, especially in the middle of the day. I can't imagine that anyone had any concerns about their safety driving through the area when all this was unfolding. So, I mean, just that in and of itself, this active shooter scene unfolding in the middle of the day on just a busy roadway seems unusual.
Right. A lot of the property around there is owned by Harvard. I worked in that area for a while. It's a very safe and easy place to walk around. It's not the kind of place where you would expect to see this kind of an incident. And so I'm really going to be interested to see what the motivation was behind this. Was he targeting a business there, an institution? Was this person just firing randomly? It's hard to say at this point, but that will be a very interesting conversation at this point.
And what are investigators looking at, Ed, to try to kind of piece all of that together and try to find the motive and find out more about who this person is?
Well, in that area, they'll be looking for a vehicle, but it's possible the individual left the home and walked to that location. If they find a vehicle, they'll start with a deep dive into the identity of the person the vehicle is registered to, and try to find out if there's been any messages online, what the social media looks like. All of those things will be concentrated on by the Fusion Center as they start this investigation, and they can get a pretty good picture of who they're dealing with from very simple information at the outset. And so all of that background stuff is really important, but the most important thing that can happen is the words of the individual before they went to the hospital. I'm assuming it was the individual that was firing that was shot. I don't know that for certain, but if that individual who was firing is in fact in custody and at the hospital, there will be detectives sent there to do a questioning of that individual to find out what was in his mind when something like this happened, if it's at all possible, depending on the extent of the injuries.
And in terms of physical evidence, I mean, what are investigators there doing to collect that evidence, and what evidence are they really looking for that would help aid them in the investigation?
Right. The most important evidence at the scene will obviously be the firearm. They will work with the ATF to trace the serial numbers in their firearm to understand its sale history and whether or not it was a stolen weapon. And then they will pick up the brass from the rounds that were fired to tie that brass into that weapon. And in addition to that, there's a national computer that police enter abandoned bullet casings and ammunition into to determine what weapons are connected to that particular shooting. So that's called NIBIN, and that will be accessed in the very early hours of the investigation to try to get a good idea as to who they're dealing with here, whether it's a gang gun, whether it's a crime gun that was used in other incidents, and exactly what the motivation of this guy is.
We saw it looks like there were shell casings on the ground, because we saw some what looked like evidence markers on the ground. And how long do you think, we have two separate scenes. One looks like a crash involving some cars that just they may have hit each other that after they had been shot at. We don't know. And then there's a separate scene involving the officer involved shooting. And in a situation like that, how long do you think this area might be shut down while police continue the investigation?
Well, the answer to that depends on whether the suspect survives or not. If the suspect does not survive, then it will be shut down for the rest of the evening without a doubt. If the suspect is just wounded and is communicating with people and doesn't appear to be a fatal shooting, then it could open as quickly as a couple of hours. But I would stay away from that area for the foreseeable future right now.
And, in terms of witnesses and witness statements, will they interview those witnesses at the scene? Are they going to bring them somewhere? I mean, I know it's kind of confusing because you have two scenes and trying to figure out where to bring people and who saw what when. How do they do that?
So there will be interviews conducted at the scene in the immediate aftermath of the incident, but that's just a preliminary review from the people who were there. They'll get a lot of intelligence from their initial take, but they'll want to take the main witnesses back to an office so they can sit down and have a conversation with them as to exactly what happened, and so that will most likely be one of the state police barracks or or one of the other offices that the detectives have in that area. Obviously, in the downtown Boston area, there are a number of places where witnesses can be brought to interview them.
Ed Davis, Courtney Cole here. A couple of things I want to ask you about. So you spoke to us about how, in terms of how long this scene will be shut down, contained, closed off, will depend on if the suspect lives or dies. But talk to us about, just how important it is for police to talk to as many witnesses as they can. They have told residents to stay away, avoid the area, but what police gather, what investigators gather from those who saw and heard the shots and saw and heard the suspect is going to be so important.
Absolutely, Courtney. They are really looking right now at the prosecution of a very, very serious crime. This is as bad as it gets. And the district attorney in Middlesex County will be responsible for the prosecution of this case. And it's the detective's job to provide the district attorney with enough information so that, with all the information actually, so that the jury and the judge get a really good understanding of what happened beyond a reasonable doubt. And that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of documentation. It takes a lot of interviews with people. They will be treating this as seriously as any case. And hopefully they'll get all the evidence put together in a package that the district attorney can use to successfully prosecute the case. So there's physical evidence at the scene. There are statements that need to be taken from witnesses and the suspect. And then there's background work that needs to be done, as I said, exploiting social media, exploiting cell phone records, finding out where the suspect bought the gun to see if there are additional people involved that may be charged. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and there are really great people that conduct that work, and so it's a very busy afternoon over there.
And when we talk about the work that needs to be done, we live in a day and age where now everyone pulls out their phone, they're recording what's happening. There could potentially have been cameras and the cars involved. We know that there was a local school bus that drove through. Can we talk about how important video was going to be when it comes to building the case and figuring out exactly what happened here, even motive?
Right. So I was in active police service during the transition from, securing a scene and looking for things like eyewitnesses and forensic evidence to this transition into securing all the video in the area. And so there are experts in the police departments that are charged with just that responsibility. They come to the scene, they do an initial survey to identify where the cameras are in the area. And then they will start at that ground zero location and start to access all of the cameras in the area. There might be some government cameras there for traffic control, DOT, things like that. But the large majority of cameras are coming from private businesses and private residences. Everything from Ring cameras to very sophisticated corporate cameras, even from companies across the Charles River that might be able to pick up some of the activity there. All of those places will be identified, and those pieces of evidence will be run down. And then when you're talking to the witnesses of the case, inevitably someone will have pulled out their phone and videotaped what was happening. And so that is crucial evidence, especially of people that were very close to the action, that can show exactly where the person was coming from, exactly what he was pointing at, and also what he may be saying during the course of the incident, depending on how close they are. So all of that information plays a vital role in building that picture that the prosecutors need to put on a good case.
And Ed, in the event that the suspect would not survive, that does not mean that the police investigation would be over, right?
Oh, no. As a matter of fact, it makes the investigation more intense. Anytime there's an officer-involved shooting, regardless of how obvious the justification is for it, it needs to be documented for the families involved, for the residents and the people who are in the neighborhood, so that they understand exactly what happened. So there's not necessarily a criminal prosecution if the suspect is dead, but there is a need to close the loop, if you will, and make sure that everybody understands as much as they can about this. And the other part of that, Cheryl, and I'm glad you asked that question, is the research part of it. There's a whole bevy of criminal justice researchers at universities across the country, Harvard right next door there, but everywhere, that are looking into cause and effect of these incidents. The behavioral sciences group at the FBI, for instance. All of those organizations will be looking for reports back on this to find out what prompted it, with an eye towards preventing it in the future.
And Ed, just one last question. As for the trooper involved, the general protocol is that trooper goes to the hospital. Is that right?
Yes. Most police agencies have that in their contract, where the officer or trooper will go to the hospital for physical assessment. And, you have to understand the psychological and physical toll that something like this takes on an officer. They're operating off adrenaline. They are responding in the way that they were trained in most cases. They are doing things exactly the way we've trained it into them. And in this particular case, the officer walked away, but there's a realization that they could have died. And after that realization hits you, you really do need to have some counseling and be able to talk to people so you can get through it. A lot of officers, after an officer-involved shooting, never come back to work. And so there's been a lot of work done to try to alleviate the stress on the officer, and to make sure that they weren't in physical, hit physically somehow. Sometimes with the bulletproof vests and stuff, I've been in situations where officers have had shots fired at them, and they've asked to check their vest to see if it's been hit, because they don't really even know if they've been clipped or hit with a bullet. So all of that stuff is part of the normal protocol. It's the right thing to do, and it's all going on now. The officer is usually put out on a leave pending the investigation with full salary, and hopefully he's going to be all right.
Well, Ed Davis, our security expert here at WBZ, we know you have so much experience that brings so much context to situations like this, helping our viewers to really understand what's going on, especially those that are close on the scene, that work around there and that live there, that have seen and heard things from nearby apartments. This is so helpful. We thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye now.
And we're going to